Hello, everybody, and welcome to County Executive's Mark Erich Proclamation presentation. I'm Lorna Virgili, Hispanic Public Information Officer, and each month the County Executive recognizes organizations, people, or important events during this program. These events are designed to provide a place for us to celebrate some of the wonderful people and events that make this county so great. This event is also a live broadcast and will be posted on the county's YouTube page. For today's event, we will be presenting Rosa Parks Day Proclamation to James Doe, who is the Director of the Office of Human Rights. And also joining us today is Council Vice President Gabe Albornoz and Chris Conkling, the Director of the Montgomery County Department of Transportation. And with that, I toss it to you, Mr. County Executive.
So I want to thank everybody who's joining us today for this proclamation. When Lorna was talking about this in the introduction, we were talking about introducing proclamations for people and events. And in this case, it's a proclamation for a person who was made, who made a truly significant event with the bus boycott that began in Montgomery, Alabama, and her commitment to civil rights and her refusal to move are things that I think gave shape to the civil rights movement that was reinvigorated by that and led eventually to the passage of critical civil rights legislation in the United States a decade later. So it took a while for progress to be made the way it should have been made. But what she did that day, December 1st of 1955, set the tone and I think set the wheels in motion for the bigger changes that followed. So I want to read this proclamation with Gabe Albornoz, and we will alternate. And I'll start with Proclamation, Montgomery County, Maryland. Whereas Rosa Louise Macaulay Parks is an American hero. Her courage and moral clarity in the face of bigotry and oppression highlighted the civil rights movement and inspired millions to stand up for fundamental fairness. And
whereas on December 1st, 1955, Rosa Parks' refusal to give up her seat to a white man on a Montgomery County, Alabama bus and her silent, determined defiance gave voice to millions in their fight against injustice and intolerance. And
whereas Ms. Parks' arrest sparked the December 5th boycott of city buses by 42,000 African Americans who helped change the course of America. And
whereas this act was called the Montgomery Bus Boycott, which lasted 381 days and ended on December 21st, 1956, with the U.S. Supreme Court ruling in November 13th, 1956, that segregation on city buses was unconstitutional. And
whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had informed the Montgomery Improvement Association and led the mass movement of the bus boycott, propelling the nonviolent resistance into what would be called the civil rights movement. And
whereas Rosa Parks' heroism that day showed that one person can change the course of history and inspire the change in the hearts of a nation. She is remembered as the mother of the civil rights movement, and during her life she said, and I quote, "I'd like for everybody to remember me as a person who wanted to be free."
Now, therefore, do we, Mark Erich as County Executive and Gabe Albornoz as County Council Vice President of Montgomery County, Maryland, do hereby proclaim Wednesday, December 1st, 2021 as Rosa Parks Day in Montgomery County. We urge all our residents to remember Ms. Parks' unshakable commitment to a better world and her fearless will to battle injustice at tremendous risk to herself for the sake of the greater good. We must continue the movement toward a more fair and just society for all. Signed, first day of December, 2021. And I will give this to James now.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive, and thank you, Councilmember Albornoz, as well, for your support of this very important day. Rosa Parks was one of those persons who, ordinary person, but did an extraordinary thing on that day, December 1st of 1955. And to understand the real ramifications of this whole process, Rosa Parks was sitting in her correct seat, seats that were assigned to, at that point in time, colored passengers. And the rule was in that day and time that if seats filled up for white passengers, then those black passengers would have to stand up and again give up their seat. And so in this particular instance, if seats and standing room was not available, then those black riders would have to in fact get off the bus and wait until the next bus then came to their route. And so as you can see, it was oftentimes a very humiliating process for black riders each and every single day. And so it was then this one act that on this particular day, the driver, Fred Blake, knew Rosa Parks. This was not a situation for which there was, again, folks who did not know one another. They, in fact, knew each other. But on this particular day, she made a determination that she was not going to move. And on that particular day, resounded for all of us a new birth of freedom in terms of being able to be accommodated in public transportation all across this country. And so it's extremely important that we remember this day and have a chance then to think upon the courage it took to stand up and stand for something. Rosa Parks said, "People say that I didn't give up my seat because I was tired, but that isn't true. I was not tired physically. No, the only tired I was tired of giving in. I see the bus pass every day, but to me, that was a way of life. We had no choice but to accept what was the custom. The bus was among the first ways I realized there was a black world and a white world. Stand for something, or you will fall for anything. Today's mighty oak is yesterday's nut that held its ground." Rosa Parks. And now let me bring up I should say, let me bring up my colleague, Chris Coughlin, who will talk about, again, the Department of Transportation and their very important part of this process on this very special day. Director?
Thank you, Director Stowe. I'm very happy to be here and to support the efforts of County Executive Elrich and Director Stowe to commemorate this important day. Obviously, our bus system is symbolic in this commemoration. It is the location where these events occurred in the 1950s, and we like to commemorate this on our buses today. In each of our buses, there is a bus card displayed in the advertising section to make our passengers aware of the importance of this day and to give them a reminder to thank Rosa Parks for her commitment to achieving these goals of racial equity in her time that we continue to work to try to achieve and advance today. The bus system continues to be an important way in which the county provides access for those who can't afford or otherwise do not have their own private transportation, and is one of the tools that we have available to us to try to advance our goals to have a more equitable and welcoming community. So I encourage you to look for these cards as you ride our buses and to give some thought to the contributions of Rosa Parks to our community and to our society, and to thank those who work so hard to help us achieve these objectives. Thank you, Lorna.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you, gentlemen. And do you have any final words, Mr. County Executive?
I think one of the hardest things to deal with is the fact that we're still fighting these same battles today. The civil rights movement led to, eventually the passage of major voting rights legislation in the United States that guaranteed that everybody would have the right to vote. And as we're standing here commemorating this as the beginning of the great push for civil rights in this country, in Congress today and across the country in many, many states, people are pushing back. Republican legislators are pushing back and trying to remove the rights, the voting rights of African-American residents of this country, poor people, whenever they get the opportunity in general. This is sad commentary on what was at one point in time a bipartisan recognition that this country needed to move forward and address civil rights for everybody, that we're now in a situation where civil rights has become a partisan issue. And the idea that civil rights is a partisan issue is an embarrassment to this country. We need to move forward. We need to guarantee people's right to vote and their right to participate. And we should not let the work that Rosa Parks did rest in vain. We need to resume where we were and move back. And we all have, I think, a commitment to do that work. And I just think all of our residents need to know that when we're celebrating something, it's in a context of our real world, which is very disrespectful of the progress that this country made in civil rights. And I hope we can recapture the mantle of the progress we made. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. Council Vice President Albornoz, I see you there in the corner. Do you have some final words? Don't you
Sorry,
left
just
behind.
quickly, in 1959, my mom came to the United States as an immigrant with my grandmother and flew into Miami from Santiago, Chile. They took the Greyhound bus from Miami to Washington, D.C., and my mom spoke very little English at the time. The bus that they were on was segregated, and my mom was in the section that was designated for African Americans. She was told to move, and she just didn't understand what was happening. She was exposed very quickly to the injustices and the inequities that we have here in our country. And she often tells that story because of what we need to become as a country and as a community. So as the county executive mentioned, we have a long way to go. But it's days like this where we recognize champions among us who were brave and able to step forward. So on behalf of the council, we appreciate this important proclamation and look forward to many more better days to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Now, we hope you learned something today from this presentation. Please do check the cable listings to see when the next presentation will take place from the County Executive's Proclamation. Thank you, and we'll see you next month for the next County Executive's Proclamation presentation with Mark Elridge. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.